Hi, Thembi. How are you?
I'm well and blessed. How are you?
Well, as well. Thank you so much for coming over and for agreeing to have this conversation with me.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. You look gorgeous.
Thank you, you too. We are happy heritage. So
yes.
after such a difficult year, by God's grace we are here.
Hallelujah, yes. So this conversation actually is for Christians, non-Christians in the marketplace, and how we have to cope with emotional depression, especially regarding the COVID-19 pandemic that we've just had to face or we're coming out of. And I want for you to introduce yourself to the people who would watch this video, and then they would understand why it's. I found it very needful to have this conversation with you. So first off, start with introducing yourself, and then we'll go into the conversation.
Thank you, and good day to all the viewers and everyone who's going to be listening, who's going to join us, in this discussion today. My name is Thembi, mainly meaning trustworthy, the chosen one.
Beautiful.
And I'm a mental health and a wellness specialist. What that entails and what that means is that I focus a lot on mental health related issues, because when it comes to mental health, I think, in a space of African continent, I still feel we are not knowledgeable as much as we should. There's still a lot of stigma that is surrounding mental health. It's classified as, you are crazy, you are insane, and we don't realize that it's not as simple as just a depression. It's simply as stress, as an anxiety. And I think, today, as we're going to unpack all of that, that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. I sit, with patients on one-on-one, individual or couple sessions, or group setting as well, where I facilitate different life skill kind of group or interpersonal, life skill of groups. And I think that's why, when you called today, I was like, this is exciting because it's what I do on a day-to-day basis. And also talking about how this year in general has affected a lot of people. We were all had to do a drastic change,
Very drastic.
a huge adjustment. I feel like God is actually, beginning to put us on our knees and really get us and give him the attention that we need.
Very true. I've actually wondered, and I think that's the focus of this conversation. People lost their jobs, or people suddenly found themselves disenfranchised and not doing what was normal for them. Would you want to define what depression would be, and then would link it into
what has happened during the pandemic? I think in simple terms, when I explain to other people tend to self-diagnose themselves with depression, and I always say stress and anxiety is what we all have as individuals, as a human being. It's all about how we cope and how you deal with it. So in simple terms, just explaining depression, we would say, it's just a mood disorder, that actually persists, in terms of you feeling, sadness, you feeling like you are helpless, you feeling like you are not actually coping with your day-to-day, you are actually not sleeping, your work is being affected. Like you said, this year, a lot of people have been affected by, the pandemic. They're no longer working. So obviously, we were expecting a lot of people that actually got depressed. I mean, through this year, SADC actually, mentioned their stats that from 600 calls per day, they are now sitting at 1.2. A lifeline sitting at about 5,000 calls a day of people that are depressed because people have lost their jobs. People don't have income. People don't have food. And obviously that will aggravate, that will trigger a lot of things. People are consumed in one space, for such a long period of time. So what I'm trying to explain, this is what actually can cause depression. Life events that are unexpected, it can be caused by you actually not being able to cope with your own emotions, because now this is where the mental health comes in. Because when we're talking about also mental health, we're talking about one's psychological and emotional well-being.
True.
How you think, how you feel, and how you behave. So obviously during the pandemic, people did not know or were not well equipped emotionally and psychologically to say, if you're going to be, people didn't know that 2020 I'm going to lose my job.
True.
People had plans, people have got bills to pay, and the reality is you've lost your job. Then what? So helping you to say it's going to be okay, reality-wise it's not. But who's your source of supply? Who's your pillar? And I think, as I said, this has been a year where people had to do a lot of self-introspection, spiritual introspection, emotionally, where are you at? Who are you? This is the year where we all had to define ourselves.
Very true.
To say, where am I standing? What is actually my purpose in life? You might have been doing this job all these years, so now you are made to go back to the drawing board and actually say, God, during this wilderness, what needs to happen?
True.
What do I need to do? Give me strategies, give me direction, and restructure my business if you have to, God, so that I can be able to still offer my service, or I can still have work or put food on the table for my kids. And this is where everybody is actually at.
Well, the next thing I would like for you to quickly speak into, Thembi, if you can, is just to speak very pointedly at this coping strategies for us as Christians. For Elijah, for him, God had to come, first off, send him food through the angel and say to him, you need to eat, the journey is great. And that has a lot of depth, not just physical feeding, but he had to feed on the word to get himself ready to go. And then God also had to speak to him to delegate some of his responsibilities. There were strategies that God set in place. So do you want to speak to us now about this has happened? The depression possibly would have happened to a lot of us in different ways.
Yes.
Out of job, in job, overworked, whatever. How do we cope as Christians in the marketplace?
Okay. Yeah. I think the most important part of you coping during this pandemic, or even on your ordinary day, I think what's important is acknowledging and accepting yourself first and the situation that you currently find yourself in. And why I say that is because your job does not define you. You're an individual before you actually qualify to be any entrepreneur or a leader in the church or a pastor or anything else. You are you first. And I think that's where it is very important, because why I bring you there, mental health and wellness is about your psychological and emotional well-being. So what do we say by that? We're meaning that there are 5 different ways in terms of how you can make sure that you are still in that position. Firstly, you need to learn to actually connect with people. Connecting with God, as I said earlier, what is your pillar? What has been your driving force? What has been keeping you going on a day-to-day basis? And I think people need to find that for themselves. And secondly, being active as well, in terms of your healthy eating, in terms of walking, in terms of being able to express yourself, talking to people about how you really feel. If I ask you, how are you doing? Don't just say, I'm okay. When you are not okay, talk about that, I'm really struggling with this pandemic. I'm really scared about what's going to happen at the end of the month. That kind of thing. That's the kind of conversation you should be engaging in. You need to keep on learning. And I think this is what this pandemic has actually, this is the third point, has taught us. We need to learn new technology of how to use it, being out there and accessing a lot of things online. And we had to learn that. It's a new skill. So I think instead of also just looking at, depression makes people tend to look at only the negative side of things. It's important to also look at the positive side of things, things that are working for you as well. That's how you also cope. Despite the fact that this pandemic disrupted my year, my goals, my plans, but as a business person, as a professional person, as a child of God, this is what I've actually achieved. This is what I was able to actually do and complete. I have managed to save. I have managed, to reach people. Being active, taking in terms of consideration in terms of your health. Start walking, start jogging, eating well, making sure what you eat as well. That's very important during this time. And I think also what's important is learning new things. Like I said, mental health, you should not only look at the negative or the positive side only. I'm more of a positive, resilient, psychology kind of person. I focus a lot on building people's resilience. What drives you, what keeps you going, and what actually brings energy to you. What draw from the inside to the outside. And I think this is the period, this is the time where you had to learn new ways of doing things. Technology, a lot of people didn't know how to use technology, young or old. So you had to learn those kind of things. And these are the things that you need to learn about your own mental health. And another thing is to take notice of your own emotions, how you feel, how you respond to things, how you interpret things, you know, during this period of the pandemic. You know, how did you actually understand what is COVID-19? Do you even know what it is? Do you even know how to identify it within yourself? Because this also speaks to mental health. When we keep saying to people, you need to learn to know and learn your body. What it wants, what it doesn't want. You know, there's always saying that you need to be able to feed your cravings. I always say feed your cravings spiritually in order for you to feed it physically. You know, it starts there, you know, how you feel, how you think, and how you behave. Then, like I said, how you interpret, how you perceive things. What am I saying to you? Instead of you listening to respond, I need people to listen and understand, because that's about the well-being of your own psychological and emotional issues. So when you find yourself that you can't cope, I mean, there's online, you know, counseling that is taking place. You can call, you know, each and every hotline numbers. They are always available online. Whether you go to SEDEC, Lifeline, you go to Sanka, you go to Department of Health, you know, wherever in your country where you are, they are always globally, you know, that you can just Google and say depression or suicide or counseling. Automatically Google will actually link you with where you are at, whichever country, and then you are able to seek help. Never ever think you don't need help. You know, each and every one of us, no man is an island, as the word of the Lord says. So we need each other. Elijah had helped. Noah had helped. You know, so listening and opening up. And I think what's also critical is being honest with yourself.
Thank you so much, Thembi. And that is a wrap.